What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamer Dad channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to talk a little bit about the Division. We're going to talk about the bug that just recently got fixed in the build generation system and why I think there might have been a myth being perpetuated all this while, or maybe not necessarily a myth, but we may have misunderstood a few things regarding the support of the Division 2. This fix, in my opinion, was one that was actually delivered in very good time. I don't think the developers have necessarily encountered such a bug in terms of bringing out an update that they had to pretty much roll back the update and give basically a base backup build of the game to the audience. If they have, I don't remember it in the entire, how many years we've been following the Division now, many years from the first game all the way through the second. And then being able to fix it and do a turnaround within, say, maybe 96 plus hours, to me signal that there's more to this entire story. And we may believe something that is not necessarily as accurate as it may seem. Now, we understand that the Division 2 is being supported by a skeletal crew, and I say skeletal crew, but another studio in Bucharest, Ubisoft Bucharest, and they are in charge of basically getting the game running and doing some support. But we also don't necessarily factor in one thing, and which is the expertise within Massive that actually works on the Snowdrop engine and the infrastructure of their games. So if you don't know, in Massive Ubisoft, they have developers whose jobs are to actually deal with the engine, Snowdrop, Uplay, and connectivity and all of these other things that the entirety of the whole studio needs to work with in order to get their games delivered. These developers are the ones that no one is actually taking into account, that are actually currently on the job, making sure that the Division runs, making sure that whatever prototypes for, say, Star Wars is running, or even Avatar the game is working properly. Because if you think about the plethora of games that Massive is about to eventually drop, they're all different games in the way they've been made, and so their own personal engine, the Snowdrop engine, would have to be modified at different points in order for those games to be delivered. So they do have gameplay engineers who get the job done. So think about it this way. You have your devs who develop content and they submit that content to the developers who basically implement the content into the game engine before the engine can actually publish it. So when you think about these different groups, then you can realize that, okay, Skeletal Crew may be developing Division 1, getting content and updates and seasons, but it doesn't mean that there's not a fully fortified, fully staffed crew that is getting the engine stuff going. So this is, in my opinion, something that we haven't necessarily separated, because if it truly was a skeletal crew that's been actually doing the Division and all of the deployment of the updates and stuff, this bug would not have been fixed as quickly as it was, in my opinion, because the crew at Bucharest, their job is to basically create the content. Their job is to basically support the content, make balances, tweak numbers and all, but somebody actually puts that stuff into the game build in the engine. This is how studios get the job done, because within these games and these development phases, you want to have your developers be able to iterate aspects of their games. Example, say if you have the team at Bucharest say, hey, we want to design a new gear set. And then the developers, the game engine developers say, okay, go ahead and develop the gear set and then submit that idea or whatever it is to us. Or they'll make some sort of a private test build so that the developers can test those things there, the scenes and the scenarios, before then it gets submitted to these game engine developers who then put it into the main game build and make sure that it works properly, make sure that it doesn't cause any other glitch or bug. Now, with this being said, could it not be, and this is the second part of my video where I actually make this argument almost every time, that with this amount of expertise within the studio that they actually have more projects, basically maybe a Tom Clancy project, maybe another project that Yannick is heading within their ranks? Are they not able to do this? I think they are. I think many people have kind of maybe, in a sense, associated the fact that, people like Frederick Thailander, Bruce and all of the others, and Drew and all of the others that have actually made their way into other projects, thereby meaning that there's no one who's going to be able to make another game. I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I think with all of the expertise that the game engine engineers have, which is basically Tom Clancy based for the most part within that studio, they have some from the South Park game and so on and so forth. Could it not be that there's a team that's been working and iterating a Division project and is basically capable of just submitting their, ideas, whatever it is that they have, to these game engine developers who are staffed, in my opinion, to be able to get the workload done? I think this is the case. Even within Avatar right now, with all of the fidelity and so on and so forth, you have your technical artists and you have all these people that are within the studio. So I don't necessarily think Ubisoft Massive is understaffed. I think we're just not necessarily very well aware as to how they actually structure their entire studio. This, in my opinion, is definitely what it is that we need to be looking at to see how the future of this franchise is going to go. And now that Avatar is mostly finished, in my opinion, in terms of development, it's not going to be difficult to reroute, say, whomever you need to be able to work on other projects like Star Wars and possibly a separate video game. So I think the entirety of the Division universe needs to be taken a very close look at by us, the audience, in order for us to be able to comprehend and understand what may be going down pretty soon. Now, I want to visit another aspect of the conversation that we haven't necessarily pointed out in a long time. I remember we used to cite this thing all the time, and this is the install base of the Division franchise. I remember whenever we cite this number without actually showing the picture or the elements that actually show it, it's sometimes a little hard for us in the community to kind of digest it. So remember when the Division 2 and Ubisoft Massive had already announced initially that they were going to stop support of the Division 2, then there was backlash, then they came out with a roadmap and the plans that they had. They actually went ahead to show this one picture that pretty much depicts right now how many players have actually played the Division as a whole. And the number that they actually showed the community was, they said 40 million players had already played it, and this was basically 4 times the population of Sweden, because they were trying to kind of throw out that flex, saying, man, we've had that many people play the game. There are a lot of people that have pretty much come into our ecosystem, and this celebration led many of us to believe that they have a lot of big plans for this particular fan base. You had COVID at 2020. This may have actually pushed back a lot of their plans, in my opinion, for this game, if they had any, that was actually going to be coming from Massive. But we can't necessarily throw this away currently. I think the developers have the manpower and the staff to be able to get the job going within the studio. Another thing too is, remember, most of you here in the community, you were probably aware, you probably got the notification that the developers within Ubisoft Massive were trying to see if they could get some folk in the community to join the Elite Task Force. The Elite Task Force is not a dedicated task force for Avatar or Star Wars. The Elite Task Force is a dedicated set of community members, gamers, content creators that are dedicated to provide feedback and basically open the door for communication for the Division franchise. Now, why would they start up an Elite Task Force if they didn't really have anything to talk about other than just seasons and cosmetics and maybe a few gear sets and PTSs and so on and so forth? I don't necessarily think that that's actually the reason they actually set up another task force. I think they set up a task force to open up the line of communication and keep the community and the developers continuing this relationship pending when they're going to unveil the next Division game. In fact, I think the next Division game's unveiling is going to be similar to that of Division 2. Many of you may or may not remember, but the Division 2's reveal was actually pretty cool. It's pretty interesting the way they got things done. I'll go ahead and show you. Now, remember that in that presentation, when Julian Garrity was basically talking about the game, the developers came to E3 with gameplay. Not only did they come to E3, a lot of members of the community were also there with them, who were able to pretty much play the game, talk about the game, have conversations about the game with the developers as well. So this was a community-wide effort where we got to see people within our community actually be involved in this, and some of them were already affiliated with the Elite Task Force. I don't think these moves that Massive is making are just moves that are just to maybe do something. Yes, I understand that the entirety of Ubisoft is in trouble, but when a company is in trouble, it's not going to shrink back. It needs to continue to step into uncertain waters in order for it to be able to pull itself out of the mess that it may be in. So in order for you to be able to go into those waters, in my opinion, Ubisoft Massive is more than likely going to be taking this entire franchise to the next level by unveiling what it is that they have for their community and ensuring that we have pretty much a game or a continuation to continue to serve the community members. If you don't look at this perspective, I think we're going to miss out on a potential fun ride for this entire franchise, because this has shown itself within the Tom Clancy, ecosystem that it is a strong contender. An ecosystem that Ubisoft basically has, a plethora of games, but has not necessarily seen as much success as the Division. And looking at this number of potential customers, I can't see why they would not go ahead and pursue another game. Ladies and gentlemen, these are my thoughts for today. Thank you so much for watching the video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon. Peace out.